Wednesday, guys. It is Miss Lastly and Miss Markert, and we are here for day 18. This is our review of week number 3 matrices. So this would be the review from last week. It should be a pretty quick day. We're just going to go over solving systems of equations, putting it into matrices, and then briefly talk about quadratic sequences. And that is it for today. So pretty brief. And this is our last day of video notes for the school year. Guys! Me and Miss Markert are very excited. We've been excited talking about it before we started recording. So this is our final video of the year. The last time we have to be on camera is tomorrow. So maybe Miss Lastly will wash her hair and do something with it besides putting it in a ponytail for our last official meeting as a class. Probably not, but I'm just saying it could happen. It could happen. So anyways, Miss Markert, I will turn it over to you so you can finish us up with this review of week 3.
Cool. So I'm just going to talk really quick about solving systems of equations. I'm going to show you kind of, I guess, half examples and then leave it with how to solve the equations with matrices because we went over that yesterday. So I'm going to kind of show you some half examples because I can't really talk about these without doing some sort of examples. But again, it should be really easy. This is from last week, so hopefully it's not too bad. And in honor of our last video, I have rainbow pen for today, even though it's Wednesday. But we're going to go with rainbow pen today. Okay, so jumping right in, let's talk about solving systems of equations using matrices. So really quick, I forgot to write it out before I jumped on the video, but I pulled one of the systems from your guys' homework, and I'm just going to really quick put it into the matrices for you to review that part and talk about a couple things, and then you should be able to just solve the equations once they're in their matrices, because you guys have all had lots of practice doing so. If you still feel like you have questions, you can go ahead and watch the videos from 2 weeks ago, I think. So there's our system of equations. Remember that when we put these into matrices, we end up having 3 matrices. We're going to have our coefficient matrix, our variable matrix, and our solution matrix. So the first one that comes, or that we put in, is the coefficient matrix, or matrix. Remember that your coefficients just go in row by row, just like that, because remember, we are going to put our variables in by a column. So when you go to multiply, they all multiply to the right spot. So essentially, you're just taking all your coefficients and you're just putting them into a matrix. You're not changing them, you're not moving them. Do remember that if you are missing a variable, so like if that first equation up there was negative 4x minus z equals 18, you would need to put a 0 in for y. If you're like me and have trouble keeping track of that, I would recommend rewriting your equations so that you can see where the zeros are before putting them to your matrix. If you don't need to do that, by all means, don't do that. If you can just keep track of everything, totally fine. But just remember to fill in for missing variables. And again, that concept's not unfamiliar to you guys. You guys have to do that for synthetic division and other things. But remember to put them in the right spot. I know I wasn't paying attention and screwed that up last week. So remember to put them in the right spot because it does change your answers. Okay, and then the last thing that you need to put in is your solution matrix. And again, that just goes in a column exactly as you see above. And from there, you're just going to solve like we talked about yesterday, finding the inverse and then multiplying it. Make sure you multiply that inverse matrix on this will be the left-hand side of your solution matrix, so make sure you multiply it on the correct side of your matrix. I think that was it for that one. Shouldn't be too hard. You're just putting them into matrices and then solving. Okay, so for the quadratic sequences, remember to check for quadratic sequences. You need to find the second difference, and the second difference will be the same. So the first difference here will be, this is 7, this one is 11, this one's 13, and this one is 15. Here's our second difference. And we have +2, +2, +2. Remember that if your first difference is the same, it will be an arithmetic sequence. Again, for this unit, we're only doing quadratic sequences, so it doesn't really matter if you check, but it's a good habit to just kind of practice checking at least a few of them for when this pops back up later. But yeah. Okay, so then for this one, we have our equation. So we have the equation here. And remember, this is going to end up working just like the system of equations I have up here, except the difference here is that we have to build our equations. And this is the formula that we use. And n is your term number. Again, that shouldn't be an unfamiliar formula. It's just the quadratic formula. Okay, so let's do an example just really quick using the sequence that I have up there. So if we have n equals 1, when n equals 1, a sub n equals 2, so you're going to put 2 here, and then you're just going to put 1 squared plus b times 1 plus c. And that will simplify into 2 equals, not 2 plus, 2 equals a plus b plus c. When n equals 2, we have 9 equals a 2 squared plus b 2 plus c, and that ends up being 9 equals 4a plus 2b plus c, and then when n equals 3, we end up with 18, and I'm just going to simplify it, and then I'll write it out. It doesn't take that much longer. Okay, and then that simplifies to 18 equals 9a plus 3b plus c. Remember that with these equations over here, there is a pattern with those coefficients because when n equals 1, 2, or 3, there will be a pattern. So if you guys know the pattern, it'll be easier to fill in your matrix. If not, you can always just write them out. So then from there, all we have to do is create our matrices like we did above. So we're going to end up with 1, 1, 1, 4, 2, 1, 9, 3, 1, and then your variables, and then your solutions. Once you solve for this, whatever a, b, and c are equal to, that's what you go back in and you fill in for a n equals a b, oops, sorry guys, a n squared plus b n plus c. So whatever a, b, and c are equal to, those end up being your coefficients for your formula, and you guys should be able to solve that because like I said, I did that yesterday and it's no different from what's above. The only difference is you're building your equations.
I have a couple side things to mention only because there were a lot of really dumb things that you guys did when you typed your answers into the checkpoint for week number 3 when it came to these problems. So I was pretty lenient on the answers that I accepted for these problems. I believe they were problems like 6 and 7 or something like that, or 7 and 8. They were 2 back-to-back that you had to write the explicit equation for. So a couple things I want to point out that I will not be accepting on this week's checkpoint. So please don't make these mistakes. Number 1, I know that it doesn't seem very important, but these are sequences. When we do sequences, our variable is n. Our variable is not x. Our variable is not a, b, or c. You cannot use those, right? it is incorrect to say a sub n, and you, instead of replacing n with your values for a, b, and c, you replace, or sorry, instead of replacing a, b, and c with the values you get, you replace n. So I had some people that wrote, it was like like for instance, if these were the answers for a, b, and c, we'll just say at 2, 9, and 18, those are our final answers. Let's just pretend for this one. It is incorrect to say 2a squared plus 9b plus 18. That is incorrect for multiple reasons. You are telling me two things there. You're telling me that a, b, and c are not the coefficients, which they are the coefficients. And second, you're telling me that the variable is different for the first term than it is for the second term, which is why a is for the first term and b is for the second term, which is wrong. So that is incorrect. I also do not want you guys saying that this is a y equals something x squared plus x plus a constant. It is not x's and it is not y's. This is not something that you can graph. It is not a function. Functions we denote using y's and x's, whereas a sequence we use a sub n with a variable of n. So I know it seems like semantics for some of you, and I know that some of you emailed me with complaints about why your answer wasn't accepted, but in order to get it correct, you need to understand what you're doing. And when you use X's and Y's or A, B's, and C's, it doesn't tell me that you fully understand the problem and what you're being asked to do. So please be careful, all right? I know that it seems picky, probably to some of you, but it's just the right way that you do things. Like, yes, a variable is a variable, but in these instances, if you're given the variable a sub n, which I did specify in the problems, this was a sub n, then you should continue using those variables. So just kind of stick to those things. Don't do things that we haven't talked about, all right? So just kind of be careful when you're putting in answers. Like I said, I was very lenient last week. I think I took most of the answers anyways, even though I didn't think that they were appropriate answers. But this Thursday on the checkpoint, I'm not going to take those answers. So just be careful. Use the correct variables in your answers when you're typing them, and then you will get full credit. If you don't use the correct variables, you will not get full credit. You will not get any credit. This is all or nothing. So keep that in mind for this week. We're going to talk about it more during the live stream tomorrow, but I just kind of want you guys to get away from doing things incorrectly, using the incorrect variables when you've been given variables already. So yeah, anyways, that was just my spiel, because like I got a lot of emails from you guys saying that you don't understand why yours was wrong. Well, the answers that I put in there were the correct answers. So if yours weren't exactly like mine and it marked it wrong, that means that you really weren't all the way correct. So keep that in mind, guys.
Also, that's not the first time that you guys will get marked down, or this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last, especially if you guys take calculus. It's really, really important to get used to using the right variables and keeping track of what you're using, especially when it comes to things like derivatives, which you guys will see very early on and we'll use a lot in calculus. So yes, we're being picky, but we kind of have to be, because it's something that you will get marked down on in other situations. So get used to it, because it is really important.
Very important, right? We assign variables for a reason. They're not just picked at random. They have significances, I guess is a good word.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, so just know that, yeah, it seems picky, but there's a reason. Like, you have to use the appropriate variables in the right situations. So if you're not dealing with a function, don't use X and Y. There's just nothing else to it. I mean, you don't use X and Y if you're not dealing with functions or equations. Like, these are sequences, guys. Come on now. Sequences are different. Okay. So anyways, that was my comment that I needed to make. And I liked Ms. Markert adding on to that, because yeah, calculus, you use the wrong variables, you don't use the right ones given to you in the problem, they're not going to accept your answer. I think they're going to take your answer on an AP exam if a problem gives you variables of n and you choose to use x's. No, they're not going to give you credit, even if the work is done right. It shows that you don't exactly know what you're doing. So that is the moral of the story. hopefully this week we have a lot less of those mistakes happening. Cool. All right, I don't have anything else to add. Ms. Margaret, did you have anything else to add? Perfect. All right, we will see you guys for our last live stream tomorrow. Hope you guys liked our video. If you still have questions, remember, you can go back and watch last week's video for more examples and help, or ask us tomorrow when you see us live. Have a good day, guys. Bye.